So the Bad Quarterback League is basically everything you know about a standard fantasy football league turned on its head. So we have one-man roster. All you do is draft a different quarterback every single week. You are rewarded when they do poorly, punished when they do well. But it's on similar metrics to what you see in regular fantasy football. So touchdowns, interceptions, incompletions, all those things are going to come into play. And let me see if I can. Do we need to run through all of them? Are there
Just
specific
some of the
questions?
highlights,
There's a few unique
Major ones.
unique rules that are outside of the realm of Yahoo's capabilities that I feel
okay.
like we maybe should talk about.
Gotcha. So the standard ones that you'll see, we're a PPI league as opposed to PPR, so we're points per incompletion. So that's where your major baseline is going to come from.
which is a huge factor in my opinion.
Absolutely.
Incompletions are, when you're looking for a quarterback, you need someone who's going to throw a lot of incompletions.
Correct.
It's overlooked by a lot of people,
Yeah.
I think.
Someone who only throws 120 yards because they're on a running team doesn't help if they throw underneath all day and they go 10 for 12.
Right.
You didn't score very many points.
Yep.
And also, you have guys who will also run the ball too that can negate a lot of points very, very quickly.
Right.
So there's that as well.
Yep. So all that stuff is pretty straightforward. Just put a negative where a positive is in a regular league, and you'll essentially have our scoring system. Special things that we do that can't really be tracked by Yahoo are injuries and benchings. Specifically punishment benching. So if your quarterback is playing so well, he blew out his opponent, sits for the last drive of the fourth, no extra points there. The way that we do injury points is you are awarded 2 points for every quarter or portion of a quarter that quarterback is out for. So if he gets injured in the first, you'll get 2 points for the first, second, third, and fourth. If he gets injured in the fourth, you'll get 2 points just for the fourth.
Right.
And that has to be an injury where he stays out for the remainder of the game. He can't just miss a drive and you pick up 2 points. Needs to be knocked out of the game entirely. We had some back and forth on that in past seasons when we first installed it. We didn't want to reward or encourage people being hurt. This is obviously a league where we get joy off other people's misfortune, but we didn't want people to get injured.
Yeah.
Right. Well, what I think it's done is it's essentially kind of worked as a baseline and almost a hedge for our managers. So in a regular fantasy league, if a guy gets hurt in the first quarter, you're diversified. You have other players that can still score points and you can win. You kind of get screwed if your player gets hurt in this league with no one else on the roster, so it at least throws in 8 points, so you're not completely lost.
Because the max you're going to get is 8 points, and 8 points is below the average of what a player's going to score each week anyway.
Right.
So 8 points is not going to help you in the long run.
Just pads the stats a little bit.
Right.
And then if anytime somebody gets thrown out for playing so poorly, I mean that's the cornerstone of what we're looking for in a bad quarterback. Someone who's so bad that you're not worth the time to remain on the field. The guy who we've rostered as being worse than you now has to go in.
So what do they get there?
That's a 10-point bonus. I have to go in and manually do that. So a lot of times there's a discussion there on if it's an official benching, and I'll go in and watch the highlights.
Cam, you have to pay attention to your quarterback and report your own injuries and report your own benchings because no one else is paying attention to that. And Brian has to do that manually. There's nothing that Yahoo can do to do that automatically. So that's something you need to pay attention to.
Yeah. Which is, I don't want to get too over our skis or anything, but the pipe dream of this league is to create a system that can score that automatically.
Oh, yeah.
There's a chance we could have that. You got to stay tuned
We're
to
talking
see.
years down the line.
Right.
Years down the line.
Once we get our Patreon up and we get some subscriber base, we'll be good to go.
We'll all be outside the corporate world by then. We'll all be running the Bad QB League out of this house.
BadQBLeague.com.
So I think that covers the points pretty well. Let's talk about how we draft every week, how that's different, and how, let's say, I were to draft, and then I find out new information that my player's getting benched. Is there a way I can redraft? How does that work?
Yep. So we are a weekly redraft as opposed to the majority of fantasy leagues where every year you meet up at BW3s for average wings and beer and you run through your fantasy draft of completely new teams.
I would challenge that average
I like
subjectiveness there.
the wings or the beer?
Both.
Mostly the wings, but
Most of the wings above
but yeah,
average.
the beer depends on what you're ordering. But I'm sorry to derail you. Go
No,
on.
that's fine.
So weekly redraft every week. Opening of the season, it sounds like it's a new tradition that we select draft order based on a blind beer pong game where players are assigned individual cups. After that, draft is set up based on the order of scores for the previous week. High score you pick last in the upcoming week. Low score you pick first. Everybody in between gets filtered out. So it's a 1 hour pick clock starting noon on Saturday. Give everybody time to post their picks on GroupMe. Once everything goes through, if somebody gets injured, if somebody gets benched and is officially taken out of the game, you can just claim another quarterback who wasn't selected in the first 12 draft picks.
But they have to be benched or injured. You can't just change your mind about a quarterback.
Correct. Or someone else. So, like, let's say, Tom Brady never gets drafted. So we go through all of Saturday. We pick all our regular quarterbacks who are, juicy selections, as Aaron might say.
Juicy.
And juicy contradictions.
Creamy.
And
Yeah.
they might
Creamy
also
buttery.
be juicy selections because they are against squishy defenses.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. So if we make all those picks, Tom Brady isn't selected, but then...
Hey, Aaron,
he
do you have
gets in a
something to
car
say?
accident. Oh, boy. Aaron, is he trying to join
Aaron,
in?
get the
Aaron
fuck
is
out.
derailing this podcast by distracting me,
out.
and it sounds like he has something to say.
No, that's Tony's.
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate
I
that.
bet you regret saying that. I bet.
We'll see Aaron. We'll talk to Aaron later. He's a man who commands attention, as you can
Right.
see.
Where were we at? So yeah, so basically
Redrafting.
you can't get rid of your quarterback if he is still active for the following day. So like if Tom Brady suddenly can't play and now their backup goes in, it's not a race to drop whoever I drafted and pick
Right.
up that new guy. I have to have a valid reason for changing my player out because
Right.
I would be stuck with a 0 if I didn't switch him. That's
Right.
really the only time we let it go.
And
It's my quarterback.